We're live on Infowars.com. There's a war on for your mind. Welcome in. We live in a society.
Welcome all. Speaking of society, ever heard of armpit crabs?
No, I'm not.
Well, I guess it's medically possible. Anywhere but your head where you have hair, like your armpits, crotch, anywhere you can have crabs, lice type deal. Um, Speaking of society, what the hell's going on BYU? According to Gumbo Crab on Twitter, and this article that writes about it. Now, every source now, I guess, comes from Twitter because I got a Yahoo News, which funny that you would say Yahoo News like it's Yahoo News. Who cares? Fuck
Yeah.
Yahoo, idiots. But in reality, Yahoo is probably a better source for news than any form of corporate press out
Well,
there on the interweb.
if I remember correctly, they are owned by Verizon.
And that is the reason Verizon has to be relevant in something other than phones. But yeah, this guy's name is Gumbo Crab, and he tweeted, and apparently, and this I have another article called hitc.com was the site. I sent that to you,
Okay.
other than just the Yahoo one. But viral tweet, the one of the headlines to it is viral tweet kicks off BYU's unconfirmed armpit crabs rumor. So, and the user named Gumbo Crab unexpectedly shook things up on the internet with a tweet reading, "There was an outbreak of armpit crabs on at BYU. Sit with me for a moment and think about how that happened. Have a good day, y'all." First of all, we didn't even know armpit crabs were a condition, but according to the NHS, that's the National Health Services, right? Something
Yeah.
like that. It's possible to have crabs on areas of the body that have hair except the head. Reminds me of the Family Guy episode. They continued in the Twitter thread. The user is likely referencing the 2006 episode Prick Up Your Ears, which joked that students at James Woods High were participating in ear sex. And that's exactly what
I remember that episode.
this yeah.
So,
So I guess what these students are doing is you take the wang and you put it in between an armpit, male or female. And considering this is a very liberal institution, being a university, even if they are Mormons, probably male on male.
yeah. Well, I guess it's better than taking the moon and you're taking the sun and you're taking everything. It looks like fun. Then you put it in the armpit and now you're done.
Yep. Well, you're not completely done. You got crabs now.
Oh, yeah, trouble. Right there, my friend's trouble.
Trouble, trouble. We live in a society.
Speaking of societies, that's today's topic. That's every day's topic. We're talking about private societies, sandbox societies versus, public societies, societies that transform to
Hmm.
quicksand because people migrate open and freely.
Yeah, what's your take on that? Would you prefer to live in a more open, freely moving society, or would you rather be inundated in a sandbox society where as long as you're amongst your own kind and you feel safe behind your wall, would that be what you would you prefer?
Well, I'm not going to get J-Rex wall, so unfortunately, I guess we're going to have to incubate our own society. Um, I think there's
Hmm.
some advantages to a closed society, and such as, like you said, safety. Um,
Hmm.
Obviously, that you're amongst a culture that's homogenous, say like Japan.
Yeah, everybody knows everybody,
You know,
like a small town.
yeah,
Which can be a good thing and a bad thing. At one end, you could know everybody but not be able to get along with anybody.
yeah,
And usually in a society set up like we're discussing, if we go the hop way, you're going to be physically removed.
yeah,
If you act
covenant
If you don't
community.
act right, you're going to be ostracized and kicked out of the group.
Yeah,
And why not? I mean, go live amongst your own kind if you're not going to act like the kind that you chose at that moment to join in this closed society.
yeah. And the with the closed society, there's certainly I forgot the point I was going to make. Excuse me. I'm human. That's why I run Infowars.com.
We
But
bought it out. He needed the money, so we bought it out. We bought
yeah,
it out in
Bitcoin Cash and Monero.
in Bitcoin. It was cheaper that way.
Yeah,
Speaking of Bitcoin Cash, it is still holding its value in dollar format. Wow. Even if anytime Bitcoin Cash goes down, man, it still does not go down past $100.
yeah,
That tells you something.
yeah,
Bitcoin Cash is the future.
yeah,
Bitcoin can go fuck itself.
yeah. Fuck Bitcoin Core.
But
Anyways,
but
yeah. So in a hop in a covenant community, that's where I think I was starting to go to.
mhm,
You have these like ideas like private cities, like if you have a public city
mhm,
and there's no restrictions, you're progressively growing and allowing more and more social pollution into society.
mhm,
You can't expect to have any boundaries
mhm.
because
Well, nothing's perfect though.
yeah,
I mean, you're gonna find that also in a closed city too. But like, I mean, as Hoppo always brings up, is you have the choice to
you know,
divorce from all that.
yeah,
So,
in an open city with constant fluctuations in values and
mhm.
culture.
It's very hard to divorce. You can still do that, but on your own time. You
Yeah,
can't really do that out in the open. When you're amongst the society, when you're amongst the community of people,
yeah,
actually doing actually functioning within the societal realm, running errands, going to work, or sightseeing, whatever. It doesn't matter. Just out in the community, it's hard to divorce from all of that that's going on because it's just all up in your face. So
yeah.
about the only thing you can do is just retreat back home. Like, well, I'm never going back out in the world ever again.
And you get emotionally invested in these societies, right?
Hmm.
You want
Hmm.
to see them improve and succeed. And with public
Hmm.
system, all there is decay. There's
Hmm.
never an incentive to improve. All
Hmm.
there is, all there is a desire is to maintain and slowly degrade. So
The thing about a closed society though is they're around now. I mean,
yeah,
they're on a smaller scale. I mean, I guess what we're going to be discussing about is bringing it to a much more higher plane, but they are around. You have private communities, you have gated communities, you where you have to, in order to come in, there's a gate, you got to have badge in or meet a guard at a guard shack to let you in,
yeah,
prove that you live there. Or typically, if you live there, you'll have like a parking pass or whatnot, and you pretty much just live amongst whoever lives in that realm. There's an issue with that, and that's the fact that it's not really there's no openness in
yeah,
some of those communities, especially if it's like a condominium style community, because most people are just there to live.
yeah,
They live and then they leave to go to work or whatever, and they're never really home, and there's not really a embrace of community. But you do have, and they're starting to come back again, but you do have like subdivision societies, subdivision communities that are very close where you have to come in through a gate and it's a neighborhood. I
yeah,
mean, and you have neighbors and you can get along with your neighbors. And in most cases, in any type of neighborhood or any type of community with many different neighborhoods, a neighborhood being typically being the street that you live on, that's your realm and that's where you get along with people. I'm not saying that you can't expand over to the rest of that same community, but it's just a smaller scale and they're making a comeback.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of it is relatively private because of development ownership. And what do you think about that? What do you think about these subdivisions that are coming up? I mean, they're not, a lot of them aren't gated per
Yeah.
se, but they're development owned and operated and built, and they sell directly to the customer in order to build a community. What
Yeah.
do you think about that on the realm of development companies, these realtor companies that are buying out land and building subdivisions up and houses and selling lots to customers
Yeah.
to build a
Well,
community?
well, I mean, you think about it, um, the more dense the community, the harder it is, for society to grow outward. It's
Hmm.
it's not sprawling, it's contracting.
Yeah.
So it's not so much that, it's eating its own, but
Hmm.
the population will move to to a better scale, to better scale with the quality of culture that is maintained in the society.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, like I said earlier, this is the difference between a sandbox community
Hmm.
and, a public community in
Hmm.
that regard, because there's no incentive.
Hmm. And I like the way that you said society is contracting and not expanding.
Yeah,
That reminds me of Florence and Erlanger and Elmsmere,
yeah,
Kentucky, and all those communities over there because they are contracting. It's as much as they have expanded over the years because they've expanded in tenfold in such a short amount of time.
yeah,
You are starting to see them still expand in population, but they're not expanding outward to actually build the city to where it needs to meet its populace base.
yeah,
So they are starting to contract. And so you're seeing people literally living side by side like this
yeah,
and just condensed above and below each other. And it's just it's becoming a clusterfuck of just poorly built,
regulated.
yeah, poorly built
Yeah,
infrastructure and regulated property. I mean, and it's literally just it's a mess.
yeah. So I feel
Whereas,
like where I grew up, well, partially where I grew up, I grew up in a couple different areas in the northern Kentucky area.
hmm
Um, Crystal Lake subdivision,
hmm
it's never been updated. It's all
hmm
privately owned, but like,
hmm
the sidewalks are cracked and stuff like that. And then you
hmm
go 5 miles down the road, down the hill, and nobody's gonna know where this is, but um, you got constant development, constant improvement. It's
hmm
imbalanced.
hmm and that goes to show you that the some privately owned communities may have the means to actually innovate and improve, and then some may not. It depends on the owner as well.
Yeah,
If it's a private community that is sort of like many condominium communities. You know how there's fees that
yeah,
they're paid that have to be paid, and typically people own their property, own their condominium apartment or their small condominium home in that community. They pay fees, and they're typically very extravagant. But most people that live in a condo community are very well off.
yeah,
Um, they and most of the time, even though the price is very high, the premiums are just too too much, in my opinion. They go back to a particular reason because it's to ensure that the infrastructure of the surface lot is well maintained. Maybe they have a pool or a playground area for the kids
yeah.
that they want to
Private
maintain. They
parks.
want to, yeah, private parks, exactly. If they
David
want to
Smith.
if they want to obviously they want to make sure they want to maintain their plumbing and their HVAC systems on a modern standard throughout the entire complex. So you have all these tie-ins to where all these fees go to, and yeah, most people that are in the condominium are very well, for the most part, are well off. Not always. Some people are
Yeah,
renting from the owner for their apartment.
yeah,
So but at the same time, it's maintained on a private level because of all those fees, and it typically works. Now, sometimes you have a private community on that sort where it looks like a project house because you have an ownership that doesn't really care. They take the dues and I mean there's a difference. Like sometimes you have the association and there's no real ownership per se. The
Yeah,
owners are the condominium, those who own the condominiums, and they pay into the pool and they have their own committee and they run things. And then sometimes you may have something that's more around the lines of a landowning apartment complex. And then
yeah,
of course that's typically going to look like shit because I'm sorry, most landowning apartment renters or rentees, I should say, most landlords get subsidized by the government. So of course the property is going to look like shit. They're getting subsidized by the government. That means most of their renters are getting subsidized by the government, which means
mm,
everybody's one big welfare state, happy-go-lucky piece of garbage. And not saying all the rent, most renters are just trying to live life, and they just consequences of societal ills and mistakes made. But you have the riffraff that come move in. You have
yeah,
the landlord that doesn't give a shit, and of course, this private property doesn't get updated, doesn't get innovated, doesn't see the fixes that it needs, and that's where the issue is where do we go from eliminating the aspect of subsidy in order to embrace the element of private ownership, which brings pride, which brings a nicer community,
that's
and
nice
in which,
culture.
yeah, yeah, and in which the nicer the community, the better the culture typically, because people are just more friendly, and you can see that in society today. Like as society on an infrastructural level is deteriorating, nobody really gives a shit. Everybody has an attitude, and that kind of goes with the outlook of what's around us.
Yeah,
The the culture builds around what we perceive.
yeah. And see, like I was saying before, um, things things get worse, right? Societies,
Hmm.
in the case that I was talking about, the Crystal Lake subdivision, um,
Hmm.
people settle. Most people are like,
Hmm.
oh, well, I don't want to go there because it's not safe, or it's too worn down. You're looking at the wrong way. You can have a different perspective. That's an opportunity for somebody to come in and buy a bunch of houses and go region by region in the neighborhood and totally
Hmm.
reform
Hmm.
and make a killing long term over
Hmm.
20, 30 years. Or, a group of investors who operate independently.
Hmm. And that's what we would like to see
Yeah.
is more people operating independently rather than through a development agency or what so often like through a collective like corporate style of investment opportunity. Usually those typically don't help build a culture or rebuild a culture. They typically are just in it for the profit turnaround, buy out some land. There's usually a reason of why a corporate investor would come into, like a corporate realtor would come in and buy out like 5 or 6 homes in a community
Yeah.
to renovate. And that's all for profit. And that's fine and dandy. I mean, you're economizing upon your own realm to make
Yeah.
your company succeed. But at the same time, it's lovely to see independent people with the means to come in either as a group or by themselves and uh, reinvest in their own community, hopefully their own community,
Yeah.
or an extension of their own community to help raise the value and bring and not only help themselves financially, obviously, but also uh, bring a better standard to a community and a better culture.
Yeah. And if the people that live there aren't interested in selling their house, you can still
Hmm.
offer up a premium for the house or the houses if you're really
Hmm.
that dedicated to reforming an area.
Hmm. hmm Well, another aspect is, I mean, especially if you're a house flipper, you look through the books and communities for, especially in today's day and age, the foreclosures and the bank-owned homes that foreclose. People no longer obviously live there, and you try to get it at a low premium. Before it goes to auction, you try to offer a low premium, adverse possession, right?
Yeah, that's what I was
And
going to bring up.
yeah, yeah, and then you actually take a hold of that. You possess that property, you build it, you place more, you reevaluate it, and you create something new out of something old, and then you sell it,
Yeah,
you resell it, and then everybody wins because the government gets their tax money, you get your profit, and the bank gets their little bit of what
yeah,
little bit of their cut.
yeah. So now, what do you think about, like I said before, private cities, the incubating projects, like people who start cities, build them, and then sell them to somebody else, and then start two private cities? What do you think about something like that?
Yeah, that's tricky because it depends on who you're selling to,
Yeah,
and what the interest of that secondary buyer that is coming in is going to utilize that property. So if
yeah,
you want to start something new, that is fine and dandy, and but you gotta truly shop around if you're willing to start it up and sell that startup to
yeah,
somebody. You really have to be watching your P's and Q's yourself. And then of course the buyer is going to have to be watching their back on the fact that this could be a bad purchase. Like maybe
yeah,
what is the reason why you're selling this startup when you've started it, but I mean, did you run into issues? Like these are the questions you got to ask. Like what kind
yeah,
of issues did you run in that is why you are deciding to sell it off. Now,
yeah,
I mean, by all means, if you wanted to have two different uh, running parallel communities side by side, in which they could actually like trade with each other, work with each other, cooperate with one another, but operate independent of one another, that is great. But it all
yeah.
depends on who is coming in to work with you and the society.
And that can actually work both ways. They could be side by side, or they can be in totally different parts of the country, totally different parts of the state, totally different parts of the city. You
They
know,
can be parallel or
Obviously, the
perpendicular.
closer you are, the better off you are at managing the development of
hmm
these newer cities.
hmm
But at the same time, you know,
hmm
if there's a marketplace these types of communities, they help regulate society. So people who
hmm
want to go out and smoke marijuana or whatever, they have their community that they can go to. They got have their bars that they can go to and smoke at. Because when we were
hmm
growing up, people used to smoke cigarettes in restaurants all the time. That big a deal. Then it
Oh
became
yeah.
a big deal, and it became more and more difficult for people to practice their negative right to smoke.
hmm
I don't smoke. I've got
hmm
family that smoked for the years and years and years. It's just how it is. They
hmm
had options until they didn't.
And that's
So,
all it is. It's all about options. I mean,
yeah,
the fact of the matter is speaking of the smoking aspect, is what is the problem with it? Like nowadays, you're even seeing like casinos split off. Now they can't completely go away being fully uh fully smoking, where you can smoke anywhere, even beside a non-smoker, but they're splitting off, and whether they have, and it was at one point where you would have a large area where you could smoke in, and then they'd
yeah,
have the non-smoking set off in a corner somewhere. Now it's totally reversing because that culture shift to where smoking bad, fuck your negative rights,
yeah,
basically, in which you have the smokers are pushed to the corner, and non-smoking is all over the place, which is fine,
yeah,
but you can't conceal another segment of societal culture. I mean, you can't push people off. It's like European conquest into the Americas. They
yeah,
thought that they could just push. the indigenous tribes westward
Yeah.
until where? Like, where are you going to push them off into? The Pacific Ocean? No, you're going to eventually have to inundate them into society. You're going to have to bring them into our society in some capacity. So
Yeah.
what did they do eventually? They ended up setting up these reserves, these reservations, these concentration camps, realistically put,
Yeah.
and they resettled them in these reservation spots. But
Yeah.
that's basically all you're doing. You're the conquering culture is pushing the conquered culture out into the open. No different from Rome conquering Greece and assimilating its culture. No different from Islam, from the rise of Islam and its empires, its caliphs that expand and the forced conversions within that realm. Well, I mean, you either become a second class citizen, but the Turks allowed you to become a second class citizen. The Turkish Islamic empires they allowed you to become a second class citizen, um, but they would prefer you to convert, in which you would be able to go tier from tier to tier until eventually you rose to the top if you wanted to go that way,
Yeah.
or you're just a second class non-Muslim. The Arabs literally did they literally either killed you or they converted you. You either convert or you die. The Catholics or the Christianized Western Europe, they did the same thing. You either convert or you die. Eventually, it gets a little tiring and difficult to just kill people all the time. So you start assimilating culture, and that's what we're
I like
seeing
my
now.
hands.
Yeah. Well,
You know
in
what else I
Islam,
like?
your hands
Having
would be chopped
having
off.
multiple passports.
Hmm. So, but
I mean,
that's how it is.
I guess it's an easier way to get a second passport, right? I'm a second
Hmm.
class citizen in a foreign country, but at least I have a
Hmm.
second passport.
Exactly. Exactly. So
So
hopefully that second passport is
yeah.
Liechtenstein.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Down the
So
road. Down the
that way
road.
you can you can practice your negative rights. So or here's another one. It's in the middle of Italy. San
San Andreas?
Marino? San Andreas, yes. We're going to get a San Andreas. Not the dumbass movie about the San Andreas fault starring the Rock people, GTA San Andreas, the fictional glory paradise of gangsterism and murder,
Well, I
the
guess it's
state of
better than
San Andreas.
Gangster's Paradise.
But no, no, really, like microstates like San Marino and in the middle of Italy and Monaco right on the edge of Switzerland and France, Liechtenstein in the middle of Germany, well, right on the edge
Yeah.
of Germany. I think it borders Germany and Poland, I'd like to say, something
Okay.
like that.
Yeah.
Luxembourg, I mean, for the most part, I mean, it's not on the same realm as like Monaco or Liechtenstein, but you could still go in and be left alone. I mean, all these microstates, Malaysia,
Mhm.
Singapore. I mean, these are places that you could shift and utilize your idea of private city, your the ownership of yourself.
Yeah.
So and what's funny is I think in Singapore you have like skyscrapers that have communities in them that are privately owned.
I mean,
They have to be skyscrapers because it's a small condensed area, so they got to go up.
if you got hotels on the beach that have what's it called housing authorities and stuff like that, I don't see
Hmm.
why you couldn't have an insurance company that guaranteed that there are
Hmm.
no bars, there's no cigarettes or whatever. This is
Hmm.
our quality type of city provided by
Hmm.
insurance company A, who
Hmm.
has private security and real
Hmm.
private security, not this. Oh, I'm just going to sit there at the gate. They physically walk around and do rounds. They walk the
Blackwater
streets.
security.
Yeah, no, they physically walk the streets. They check on the neighborhoods during the day. Everybody okay? You know, it's just
Hmm.
it would be a part of the culture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
Not
and they,
this bullshit where it's
yeah,
like, hello,
yeah,
welcome to blah blah blah. I am security officer Zach.
Yeah.
Who do you need to see today? Shows gun.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you know I'm armed.
Yeah.
I
And
needed to do that.
there's no stopping social pollution. There's always going to
Hmm.
be some form of social pollution. I did security at really high scale places for like people who worked at banks at like their housing community, and they got calls and complaints about people who were smoking marijuana. You can't stop that sort of thing,
No.
but you can definitely have, you know, adaptive measures so that
Mm-hmm.
you can know not to
Hmm.
continue somebody's lease after it's happened.
And you don't have to, speaking of the marijuana thing, I mean, if there's calls because one segment, one person doesn't want to smell that nasty, skunky smell, and I don't blame them. I mean, it is what it is. If you smoke weed, smoke weed. No vices are not crimes, but people don't like it. And so the best aspect, you can't stop it.
Yeah,
There's really no way to enforce it. But what you can do is you can go over and you can educate someone and say, hey, over this is a private property. You're way too close to this
yeah,
property. You've crossed onto the boundary of this property. I'm gonna have to ask you, like, just step like 5 feet the other direction. You're off the
yeah,
property. Don't even, and there's nothing I can do about you smoking marijuana. Even if somebody calls me and complains about it, I can let them know. I'll be like, yeah, I checked on them. I told them to move off the property. They're off the property. There's nothing I can do. I
yeah,
mean, I'll keep checking on them to make sure they don't come onto the property, sir or ma'am. And that's using most people. Most people, if given some sort of respect, will give respect back and they'll understand like, oh, okay, yeah, that's fine. I get it, and they'll go 5 feet, and then they'll realize like, you know what, uh I'll just keep walking down the road
yeah,
because people are still going to smell that. So I mean, and if they don't, then at least they're off the property, and
yeah,
that's where property rights comes into onto the basis. I
yeah,
mean, and you can't completely like violate people like in the society we live in. You can't violate people completely for trespassing all the time just because you busted them on on your property, like sitting there loitering.
yeah,
I mean, you can't just do that. I mean, about the only thing you do when it comes to trespassing is tell them to get off. If they come back again, then you can do something.
yeah,
But if they keep on doing it, but if it's just typical trespassers in real reality, one time deal.
yeah,
And typically they didn't even realize it was private property.
yeah. And they don't like to deal with security. They just want to be left alone. They want to leave.
Exactly. They don't want to
Most
deal
people
with
are just
any.
walking, trying to get to their house or whatever, and the next thing is over.
Hmm.
And
And actually, speaking of that, if it's somebody, and then I'll move on and take a step back. But most people that do that cut through like private property to get to their home easily as a shortcut. They
yeah,
can they can make a deal if they get caught. I'm like, oh well, shoot. I'm glad I ran. Somebody stopped me. I was one. Is there any way we can set up some way to, especially if it's a good neighbor, yeah, where I can cut through because cutting through your yard is a faster way to for me to get from work back home, and
yeah,
then you can go from there. You can negotiate something. I don't know, maybe you negotiate cutting grass to use a shortcut. I
yeah.
don't know. It could be anything. It could just be just friendly respect. Like
We,
just watch my flower bed and all my and everything in my yard. Don't mess anything up, and I'll let you. And you can use my yard to cut over to your house anytime.
yeah. I mean, we've all had neighbors who you walk when you were a kid, you would walk on like the edge of their grass
Hmm.
because you didn't want to
Hmm.
get run. You didn't want to take a risk getting hit by a car that's driving by. It's driving by
Hmm.
slow, but still driving by. And then they
Hmm.
come out the door, get off my property, get off my lawn. And then you have this situation, total opposite. It's where you're on the bus on the way home from your public school,
Hmm.
and you want to walk home, but at the same time you wanted to get as much time with your friends that's on the bus as possible. See, you
Hmm.
you made an agreement with somebody who you can
Hmm.
cut through their yard just to walk so that you could hang out with your
Mm-hmm.
friends. You asked them
Mm-hmm.
permission. I did that.
Mm-hmm.
So
We don't see a whole lot of that anymore. Well, no, we don't see a whole lot of that anymore like we did when we were kids because there's not a whole lot of respect. I mean, one reason is the boomers are getting of age. The boomers are cranky. The boomers are pieces of entitled shit. And most boomers with their property actually will look at a 5-year-old and fucking aim a gun at a 5-year-old and say, "Get the fuck off my property, Shunny." Like, it's a 5-year-old. Just tell
yeah,
the 5-year-old, tell the kindergartner he can't walk. He just be careful of touching the edge of the grass. You
yeah,
don't like it, you don't got to raise a fucking gun to the
yeah,
5-year-old's face getting off the bus to walk 2 doors down.
yeah,
You worthless piece of shit. I'm sorry. It's time for the boomer generation to fucking kill themselves. Maybe if the boomers end up dying, maybe we can finally get rid of some aspect of social pollution in which we can evolve away from the entitlement scenario of what the boomers have given us.
yeah. I don't
Just
know.
my
Every
theory.
generation is different, right?
Every generation is different. I mean, our generation is fucked as well. I mean, but partially because of boomers. But I mean, Generation Z is completely fucked.
Yeah,
But at the same time, I mean, maybe we can fix things since we're all still young enough to where the boomers die out, we can figure out how to adapt and change and
but
evolve away from hypocrisy and disrespect.
we'll see.
But the
That's
boomers can't. They were raised by the greatest generation to be entitled little pieces of shit because they were the generation of the welfare. And that's when the government took hold of the welfare or the wealth transfer,
yeah,
monopolized everything and started stealing from the youngest working generation to pay for the old. And the boomers say, "Well, I was paying into that Social Security. My money." It's like that's not your money. We all get robbed, buddy.
yeah,
I'm getting robbed right now so you can stay in your fucking trailer
yeah,
because you went to college for you went to university for on a cheaper dime back then. Now it's extravagant, not only because of price gouging,
yeah,
subsidization, and inflation, but you went to college and you got a stupid degree. Talking about stupid degrees now, you got a
yeah,
stupid degree at a cheaper rate and did nothing with your life.
yeah. Well, for right now, we're gonna go ahead and take our break, and we'll be back in just a minute. To talk about boomers.
Yeah, fuck them, communists.
Well, let me have a rule and a saw and a board and I'll cut it. I'll climb up a ladder with a hammer and a nail and I'll nail it. Well, we worked so hard to build a little house together. In the snow or the rain or the ice cold wind, whenever. No matter what the weather, we're together. saw with a board and I'll cut it. Climb up a ladder with a hammer and a nail and I'll nail it. Well, we worked so hard to build a little house together. In the snow or the rain or the ice cold wind, whenever. No matter any weather, we're together. And I think that's everything.
John Marston, you have a home.
So do you.
Oh, I know.
And you, Charles, as long as you'll stay with us.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, to this happy home. Well, at least till this fool gets his woman back.
Welcome back.
Oh, fucking boomers.
You know,
Housing
they
and
didn't
boomers.
they didn't have to deal with tiny houses
We also
or
didn't have to
van
deal with the
life.
van life. Yeah.
Yeah,
And well, speaking of that, I mean, especially considering the culture that we live in, and because of I would, in my opinion, the rapid subsidization that has led to welfarism and supplanted and subverted all mechanisms of the financial reckoning that we all live in, especially in the housing. It's just been cheaper for a lot of people to become very minimally sound and somewhat nomadic
yeah,
and jump in and renovate a van. Now, like I'm not talking like these jackasses on like YouTube that pimp out their ride, go get a
yeah,
bus and they go buy a bus for like 2,000, a little short bus for $2,000, and then they go get it professionally renovated to live in, probably cost them like 10 grand at the, I mean, there's just a bunch of entitled little brats that want to manipulate a culture, but people that actually go out live very simple and either attach themselves to a small plot with of land and build like a small home, or they jump into their they go out and buy like a trailer to hook up to the truck or whatever. Some people even put like the tops for the beds, the camper
yeah,
tops for the beds of a truck. Some people do that, or it can be anything, and they gradually adapt towards what they eventually need. Like real people that actually live the van life culture or the tiny house ordeal, they are
yeah,
true minimalists. Like they are just living simply because that is the time that we live in. That is, I mean, the
mm,
financial market is garbage. The government is a monopoly, and there is no free market unless you extremely divorce yourself from the centralized controls of
yeah.
government
Going
and
off
the
grid.
central bank. Yeah, going off grid. That's what
Yeah,
I was thinking about.
take
What do you think
Kaczynski.
about that?
um, no, I'm sorry.
And should we all be
I
like
mean,
Ted
like,
Kaczynski
yeah, right.
besides the bombs?
Yeah, and the college degrees.
I
Going to
mean,
college makes you crazy. No, becoming a professor makes you
like,
crazy. You know.
yeah. He was a professor,
So
wasn't
yeah, he
he?
was. So
Yeah.
that's how they caught him because his brother had compared the his handwriting or
hmm
something like that.
hmm
Anyways,
He was
no, like
a professor at Boston U, wasn't he?
I
Something like
guess,
that. I don't
yeah.
know. I don't remember, but
I
somewhere up in
I
that region.
I do know, we talk about tiny houses. They have grown in popularity, but
Hmm.
at the same time, there are isolated stories from the past of people, from
Hmm.
the baby boomer generation and stuff like that, who their parents did buy them a shed, and they expanded that
Hmm.
shed into a full house eventually. So I'm not saying that, you know, it
Oh,
never happened.
oh, was that?
I'm trying to be fair here, but
But
it's
what?
it's it's much.
But for the boomer, for the boomers though, wouldn't that be more so on the purpose that they were just kicking them out of the fucking house?
Yeah,
You can live here, but you're gonna live in this fucking shed. And the
yeah.
boomer's like, well, I'll go
Ma-
to the fucking government.
uh, well, the welfare system wasn't as powerful as it was then as it is now,
Just think of
and
that, people. The welfare
the
system
strength.
expanded because of third wave feminism. Boomers.
Yeah, and fourth wave, and second wave.
Hmm.
Hell, all of them is.
Yeah, yeah, fourth wave is millennial.
Mm,
We learned
but
so much
yeah,
terrible, terrible pollution. We polluted ourselves because we learned from it.
yeah.
But that's how
So
generations you learn from the previous.
yeah,
All right, enough
but
of my shenanigans. You
yeah,
go.
as I was saying, if you go back in history and the history of the United States, at least specifically, there
Hmm.
used to be, you know, people used to own large, huge estates. The money was a lot stronger, but it was a lot harder to make that money because you
Was the
had to put a
money a
lot more
lot
effort.
stronger? Was the money a lot stronger, or was it just the confidence that people could figure out their means?
The
Their value in certain goods were of
Yeah,
more necessity. So therefore the purchase of their whatever their exchange rate would be, or whatever their
yeah,
exchange ratio was, it could be fucking peanuts for all we know. We don't. But I mean, that's basically where it goes. I mean,
yeah.
so. Is it the confidence, or is it the fact that that dollars were stronger?
People had more creative control over their lives because there
Hmm.
wasn't such an intense desire to control
Hmm.
what is politically identified as social pollution.
Hmm. No, I mean
And
we fought a revolution on that one. And
yeah,
ever known as the what was it called? Was it called the Compromise Line of 1763? That basically the possessions of what was formerly French territory was now British, and the British, in order to control the populace of their colonial colonists and their original Eastern Seaboard territory from venturing west. Of course, people still ventured west. You're not going to stop that. And they were still settling west of the Appalachian Mountains into the Ohio country, et cetera, into what is Western Pennsylvania. But yeah, I mean, the British Crown, the British Parliament attempted to control that by creating an imaginary boundary, borders.
yes,
Didn't really
the,
work to a certain
they
extent, but
got
it was a form of control.
they got tired of fighting, and
Hmm.
they just wanted to have an agreement.
Hmm.
Kind of like
Hmm.
with Russia, but we're not here to talk about Russia right now.
We're not. Let's not go into that.
Yeah,
Let's not go into that. So too many I agree with the current thing type of mentality that people live
yeah,
in today.
yeah, yeah,
But to a certain extent, yeah. It there's a little similarity to the Donbass region with Russia and Ukraine as there was with the old French New World territories in between the Mississippi and the Appalachian Mountains when Britain took over. I mean, so
Well, that's part of the risk is when you go into these very relatively new communities around the world, is
hmm.
you risk that being exposed to conflict like that because people
Hmm.
are society is not as settled as it has been. It hasn't petrified,
Hmm.
so there's still a lot of room for change.
Well, some would say that society doesn't settle because that's just a natural order of things. The world is chaotic,
Yeah,
so I mean, we think of, because we're so sheltered in our lovely United States of America, that with our picket fences and our large swaths of subdivision, modern homes, and it's just the peaceful. It's that's life. It's just peaceful and simple, right? Well, that's not reality. A reality is you got people dying every day from a airdrop bomb onto their house in the middle of Yemen. The reality is you have shelling from across the Donbass region, from Ukraine, and vice versa from Donbass into Ukraine. The realities is violence is inevitable, conflict is inevitable. You just have to, and you, like you said, you hit it on you hit the nail on the coffin right there. Like you you hit the hammer on someone's noggin right there.
Yeah.
um, Conflict is inevitable, but adaptation is always profound. We find a
Yeah.
way to live. So,
I mean,
mhm,
we can live out in, the uh, sub-Sahara. We can live out there in
mhm,
Antarctic temperatures. Humans adapt. Not
mhm,
to say it's not easy, but
mhm,
we can live anywhere.
mhm.
So
I mean, there's a colony of researchers and their families actually in Antarctica. They've been there for probably that's been a community for probably like 60 years since
yeah,
settlement was made up there for research purposes. Of course, it's mainly scientists, but they conduct their research on the surface only certain times of the year. But they are there. There are small swaths of researchers that still live there year in, day out, 365 days of the year. They just live underground. They
yeah,
literally live in bunkers underground where they can manage. And then when it gets warm enough, um, meaning tolerable, that's when they're able to walk up onto the surface of the
yeah,
desert known as Antarctica and study and conduct their research and their adventures on the surface. So humans can adapt. It's no different from the Arctic, like up in the Nordic regions of Scandinavia, the far north of what is now Canada, with especially with the ancient Inuit tribes there. I mean, humans adapt.
yeah.
You can live just about anywhere,
I've
or
seen
in Florida.
houses that were literally underground in the
Hmm.
American South. That
Hmm.
you would exit the property through the roof.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's
Oh
rare,
yeah,
but it
yeah.
happens.
Yeah. Oh, and they're not. I don't think it was predominantly south. I think it was more so as you went westward into. They were called sod homes. They're literally houses made out of the ground, rock, sediment, dirt, mud, just all that sod put together. They place a door, and they really are. They're practically underground. It's almost like a hobbit home. Most of them were most of them were settlers that moved outward into the northern Great Plains region, like the Dakotas and
Yeah,
Nebraska, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, and there were some in like the South, especially like in like Texas and Arkansas and et cetera. But those were the sod homes. Pretty cool, actually. The
yeah.
fact that you can live.
People live out of hotels. It's
Hmm.
happened all the time.
Hmm. Homeless people live out of hotels, especially in California,
Yeah,
where the hotel where they're being
the
hotel.
taxpayer pay for
Yeah,
it.
yeah. The taxpayers pay for it, and the hotel owners are forced to permit the homeless or excuse me, the unhoused, political correct, everybody, to live there, which is fine. I mean, that's great if you're gonna do it on a voluntary standard, to be forced to do it, and then allow
It
the
is.
people to be extorted into paying for it so government can issue it. That's wrong, but and immoral in my opinion. But I mean, that's fine. I don't I don't disagree that maybe we need more people to voluntarily allow people. You wouldn't have homelessness. People were
Yeah.
more voluntary.
Well, speaking of voluntary and homelessness, the voluntary state, Tennessee, made it illegal for people to be homeless in Tennessee. So they send them to jail. But what happens if there's no room in the jail? Are they gonna? Is it cheaper for them to buy or to build another jail, or is it to contain the homeless, or is it cheaper for them to rent them rooms at a hotel at a discounted price because obviously they're going to give them a tax break?
Yeah, well, I mean, it'll probably be cheaper to force hotel owners, well, just like California. They'll get into
Yeah,
the same scenario as California. It's cheaper to utilize the hotels, because it is strenuous. It's a lot of time, a lot of energy. It can take a few years before a new jail is built. And
yeah,
then on top of that, you got to think of food. I mean, 3 meals a day. You got to think of, I mean, there's also you have to think about paying employees to run that jail, the correction officers within that county. So you'll see start seeing a situation in Tennessee where they'll do the same thing as what California has started to do over the last couple decades. They will
uh,
force hotel owners upon the taxpayer bill. They'll give the hotels certain tax credits, especially considering that Tennessee's conservative. But up on the taxpayer bill, they will force hotels to include the homeless. And then on top of that, that's going to devalue a community, and especially a tourist community, like in the Smokies or in Nashville, etc. And it'll hurt the economy because they're not helping these homeless. They're forcing society to assimilate them into
yeah.
society.
If you
But
live in a
not,
private,
yeah.
a private community, private sandbox, you know, you
Hmm.
don't have to worry about these issues because it's a part of the agreement.
Yeah.
I say sandbox, but I mean like it's the most realistic,
Hmm.
approachable, understandable term.
Yeah. Well,
For people to
when we're talking
understand what we're
sandbox,
talking about. Yeah,
we're not talking like we're not trying to compare it to like the map of like GTA, where that's a
yeah,
sandbox map because you're trapped on one certain map. You can't, and there's a there's the imaginary development border that usually is imagined through the development the developers placing like a cliffside. We're not talking like that. We're talking sandbox on the element that it's a closed in society where people are have compromised and agreed of how what our rules and our regulations are going to be here and how do we enforce them and what
yeah,
can we enforce and what we cannot enforce. And if we cannot enforce it and you can't provide by the rules coming into the society that we have set that we can enforce, then you just need to divorce, and we'll
yeah,
divorce from you, you divorce from us, and you leave. So
yeah.
so
And
you're not stuck in it. You can leave, but only if there's no agreement in it. Whereas
yeah,
with like GTA when talking about that type of sandbox, that sandbox map situation, you're stuck to that map. Obviously, it's a game.
yeah,
That's not what we're talking about when we say sandbox.
yeah. Covenant community sandbox, private community, private cities,
Mm-hmm.
and people who are, on a recommendation system, if they was to move to a high scale environment, they would have trial periods. You know, I'm in this apartment for 4 months, 3 months. There's no issues. Okay, well, we're gonna kick it up to 6 months, a year, 2 years. Eventually, you don't have to
Mm-hmm.
worry about it because you're such a trusted neighbor that you're
Mm-hmm.
not going to cause trouble. Not to say that trouble doesn't happen,
Sort of like a
but
lease.
yeah, but like
Yeah.
the culture will be so strong and so stable, and people will know you that they don't have to worry about you bringing
Mm-hmm.
in marijuana like I was talking about earlier in the
Mm-hmm.
episode
Mm-hmm.
because they know that
Tristan.
you're not. What?
Oh no, go on. Go on. Go on.
Oh, okay,
I'll bring it up a second. I thought you were
okay. No, I'm just saying I'm trying to illustrate a picture here.
I can
So
illustrate a picture. It's like that song from Tracy Bird back in the 90s. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody calls you friend. You don't
copyright
need
strike.
an invitation. Kick off your shoes and come on in.
Yeah.
Oh, we know how to work and we know how to play. We're from the country and we like it. Or, fuck, I fucked it up. But yeah, well, I'm from the country. I'm from the country from Tracy Bird. It came out in the 90s. Great song, by the way.
He's from the
That's the idea.
Midwest.
The idea is a culture, man. The culture of knowing everybody, getting along with everybody, and being able to make certain compromises, certain contributions to that society, in which
Yeah.
you may have to sacrifice certain aspects, but it's for a greater good, and you're not going to have to sacrifice it on the
Communist.
fact of your on your own individual communist. Yeah, you don't have to sacrifice your own individual values, but to live in society, you are going to have to sacrifice certain aspects. It's not saying that you can't go home. Like, we're not talking about a communist society where we have to sacrifice everything in order to share for the greater good. Everything. It's like, no, 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 no. A gift economy, and in that regard does not work. It does not work. But you can cooperate with one another, and you can regulate that way. And if you can't
Yeah.
get along, then get the fuck out.
Yeah.
See, in a communist
Co-regulation.
society, yeah, in a communist society, you're just gonna you're not gonna be kicked out. You're gonna be sent to the gulag, work to death, work half to death. Then they'll kick you back into society. Well, they'll just murder you.
They're gonna have it up on the wall. One death is a tragedy, a million deaths is a statistic.
Mm-hmm.
You really want to live in a neighborhood like that?
Yeah, it sounds like Chicago.
Yeah. Hey, speaking of Chicago, they don't have any more room in their black site, so they're just gonna let people go out of the jails. Public system once again.
See, and that's not co-regulating. And you were gonna
Yeah,
talk about
that
co-regulating.
that is quicksand at its finest.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It is. It's all about co-regulating on one another. You can be an ANCAP, you can be an agorist, you can be a communist if you really wanted to. But if you are, you probably should just leave the society and go start your own society somewhere, which is fine, man. In a true free voluntary society, you have every fortitude to go off and attempt your own society. So if you are an ANCOM, go ahead, grab a crew of your own ANCOM friends, go start your communist utopia and see how that works out for you. That is the brilliance of a free voluntary society, and that's what we mean when we're talking about private communities.
Yeah,
Is we are able to set the standard in what we want as a society, as a group, as a community of individuals for how we want to live and cooperate with one another. By all means,
yeah.
if you can figure out a way to voluntarily share everything with each other, which you could, you can, I mean, just remember there's always going to be that one person that says I want it all and you give it to me. And that's why communism fails. That's why in in Soviet Russia you got Joseph Stalin.
Yeah.
That's why Vladimir Lenin, upon becoming the supreme leader after the revolution of 17 and the civil war that led into it between 1918 and 1922, ended up becoming a dictator. It's a dictator of the proletariat, which leads to legitimate statism because nobody wants to share anything. It's easier to cooperate and trade amongst one another and figure out means of how to exchange ideas, exchange goods, exchange services, and and live side by side. But it's very difficult to just share because nobody wants to share. We're all narcissists in some
I
capacity. Human beings are narcissists.
I want to go and vote for Best Korea.
No, we talking Kim Jong Un's Korea. or
Kim
I don't know who
Jong-il.
or
No,
we talking?
sorry. You were saying earlier you got your news from that article from Twitter, right?
Mm-hmm.
Twitter is becoming more and more centralized, and Facebook is
I'm
dying off. There's less
yeah.
people that are using it every day.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and you have this natural progression, this natural evolution of
Mm-hmm.
the town square that once the rules and once it's been purified by a select party,
Mm-hmm.
you see growth in alternative
Mm-hmm.
networks. I mean, I was just watching the
Mm-hmm.
rest of that interview with Yi, right? And he's like, I'm gonna buy
Mm-hmm.
Parlor. That's
He
still
bought
a
Parlor.
central.
I thought
Yeah,
he already did.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. But I mean, like, he's got this idea. Like I was going back about
Yeah.
Crystal Lake subdivision earlier. Um, instead of building something new, you go and buy something that's already established and try to reform it. Meanwhile, you've got
Mm-hmm.
fresh blood out there who are building their own decentralized networks. It's
Mm-hmm.
called a federated network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, and if you don't like what's on the federated network, you can censor it from your point of view, but it
Mm-hmm.
still exists on the network.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. What kind of for these online community sources? I mean, what would you what would you consider would be a federated network for those that are out there right now? These networking sources, these social networking sources on the internet. What would you consider federated right now?
what else? I think it's called Tutor, and it's like
Yeah.
Twitter, but
Mm-hmm.
it's totally
Mm-hmm.
it's totally
Mm-hmm.
decentralized. You can have servers that people
Mm-hmm.
can connect to, and you can clone the servers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Oh, okay.
and
Yeah. Sort of like a torrent,
yeah,
or very, very, very similar to a torrent.
yeah. There's
Realistic.
actually
Yeah.
if you've ever, I don't know if you've ever been to 4chan, but
Mm-hmm.
there's a BitTorrent style 4chan network
Mm-hmm.
that's federated.
Yeah.
It's called 0chan.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
That's
it it's
that's
it's
how you do it.
constant
You
it's
can split
constantly
off.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
They're they're
constantly
they're
evolving.
essentially they're essentially doing what Bitcoin Cash did. The Bitcoin Core, not just once,
Yeah,
not just twice, but three times. They forked,
you know,
and literally they forked. They went off their own way. Like, okay, we don't like how everything is centered here at the core of it, at the centerpiece of this network.
yeah.
So
The
we're going to
dynasty.
utilize, yeah, we're going to utilize the open source idea of splitting from that dynasty. And then, oh, now we have this fork. Oh, but this segment of the network says, oh, we don't like how you are centralizing, so we're going to fork and create our own segment. So, and
Yeah,
that's kind of what social networking in general, whether it's federated or not, because of the internet, World Wide Web is.
yeah,
I mean, even though they're very, very centralized in the standard of what type of networking personnel they want coming to it, you have that segment with like sites like I think it's called Tribal that's starting
yeah,
up, which is like very like Democrat or liberal, and then you have Trump's Truth Social, which is
yeah,
Trumpian conservative, whatever the fuck that means.
yeah.
But
Very loose
that's how it
terms.
is. Very loose terms.
Yeah,
But the fact is like you can have what the federated network is, from what you're saying, is it pretty much is like Tutor. It's being internal within that same network, but you can
yeah,
branch off. You can block the viewpoints of what you disagree with and focus on the perspective that you want to focus on.
yeah. I
Just
mean,
like yeah.
look at decentralized exchanges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people, oh, we can only use centralized exchanges. No, you have
Mm-hmm.
decentralized exchanges. There's
Mm-hmm.
still some people that try to encode code the exchanges so that it can be shut down. But there are people who absolutely believe in unlimited 100% free speech, free action. So
Elon Musk.
he's a free speech absolutist, but I don't think he's a free action absolutist. I can't.
I
I
don't
mean,
think
he had to say it
no,
himself,
he's.
but he'll never see this.
Mhm.
How can we ask him something like that? A million people
I don't
tweet
know.
him a
I don't
day.
know. Let's ask. Let's ask Elon Musk. Come on to our show.
Yeah, right.
So, but yeah, the fact is like you're exactly right. Like he may be a free speech absolutist when it comes to the networking aspect of like Twitter and all that, but is he a free action absolutist? Is he somebody who is willing to allow for people to branch out and do their own thing, or do you have to be centerpiece in a centralized structure to where you can say what you want, but um, you better not fuck up,
Yeah,
essentially. I mean, and in reality, is that really a free speech absolutist?
no,
No. Is that really a conservative?
a compassionate conservative.
What exactly is conservatism, anyways?
I
What are
don't
we
know.
conserving?
There's all kinds of different force of what conservative
Mm-hmm.
means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Neoconservative, paleoconservative. You know, the list goes on and on.
Conservative socialism. uh,
Uh, but hey,
that's
that's the thing about a free society.
mm-hmm.
Sandboxes is that all these different ideas of what conservative or what liberal, of what progressive,
Mm-hmm.
of what
Mm-hmm.
anarchist means
Mm-hmm.
that they can cohabitate in the same community where they don't
Mm-hmm.
have to
Mm-hmm.
deal with things that they're allergic to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for anarchists like us, I mean, there's many different schools. And just so
Yeah,
you know, like anarchy started on the left. We're leftists. And the fact is there shouldn't be a right or left paradigm. That's political jargon. That's complete bullshit. If you really want to think about it, the right has always been authoritarian to a certain, I mean, the Nazis considered themselves right wing, and yet the Nazis were leftist as fuck in today's
yeah.
standards. So because they were socialists, so you can't look at it like
Today's
that.
standards are
Standard,
not the same
exactly.
as yesterday's standards.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, the fact is you can look at it this way on the political structure. Our conservatives and our liberals in this country, far different from the liberals and the Tories of Europe,
Yeah,
being the conservatives. Very different parameters. You could certainly say that you have conservatives in like France and Britain that that coincide more so on the perspective of American liberals and vice versa with liberals of Europe and conservatives of America. It doesn't mean, I mean, conservatism can mean something totally different, and liberalism means something totally different. I mean, at one
yeah,
point, it's been so polluted that I mean, at one point, liberalism, I mean, it has the prefix liber in it. I mean, liberty, right? That's the whole idea is the expansion of both the mind and the body on a physical realm to bring about liberty.
yeah.
Libertarians are liberals for the most part, right? But yet we've been so socially polluted to this confine of liberals or socialists. It's like I mean, we forget. I mean, we literally forget as we evolve through the times, as we perpetually fast forward through the times, not really evolve. I don't know how much we're actually evolving, but it just means something totally different. I mean, at one point, like so when I ask like what are conservatives truly conserving? Well, it depends on the times. What are you conserving? Conservatives want to conserve what they're comfortable with, what the status quo is at the moment. So back in like say the 1850s, especially in this country, conservatives were Well, they were the Democratic Party. What were they trying to conserve? They were trying to conserve the status quo of more federalist structure of government. The Southern Democrats were very conservative on the ideas of keeping their states' rights, their private property, their negative rights to own other human beings and make them work, trade amongst other slave owners, and lease off other slaves in order to utilize their slave labor. Yeah, conservatives. The Democrats wanted to conserve the idea of slavery, while the Republicans were socialists. Really, the Republican Party, especially on the radical wing, got a lot of their cultural and social evolution through the readings of Marx and Engels. The
Yeah.
Republican Party was founded upon Marxism, which yeah, that's the reason why the radicals were so intertwined with this cultural evolution of escaping the 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 of liberation of slavery and escaping this realm of slavery of increasing the rights of wage workers, etc. Because it all starts positive. It's all positive law. It's something positive
Guarantees. It's all
in order to
campaign
guarantee
promises.
exactly. And that's the reason. That's the reason why the Republican Party was very progressive up until the point of 1905 as the Republican Party was being splintered, honestly, because of Teddy Roosevelt and his kind of double standard. Like he had his foot in on one side, but then he was a progressive on the other.
A
He
good
wanted to expand
politician.
government. Yeah, typical politician. What did that do? Well, that made room for the Democrats to say, well, we need to restructure because the Republicans are fighting with each other. Oh, that sounds like today.
Yeah.
And that's why the Democrats know how to utilize, they know how to wield power. They know how to use power when they get it. And that's the reason why you're seeing a lot of you're seeing the consolidation of the Democratic Party being successful in how they expand the government and expand statism as the Republican Party of today, just like
Yeah.
way back when, splintered. You have the radicals, you have the conservatives, you have the liberty minded, and you have the so I mean so many different wings. I'm surprised that the Republican Party. I wouldn't be surprised if the Republican Party is the next party to break, just like the Whigs back in the 1850s.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised if there is another in this country if we are to continue down this political mindset of
Rabbit
political
hole.
parties. You'll probably see the Republican Party be dismantled, and someone else will some other party will be formed with the same general principles of the initial Republican Party, right? So
Yeah.
this conservative mentality,
Well,
just like the Democrats broke out of the Democratic Republicans, um, the Whigs made the Whigs out of the Whigs came the Republican Party, and then see something's gonna give.
yeah.
We haven't seen it in a while. We haven't seen
But
it in
it'll
a
happen.
long while. It
It'll
will
happen.
happen. I mean, obviously, yeah. Obviously, the Democrats were able to attach themselves to both the progressive movement as well as socialism because they realized, well, the conservative values of the day were dying,
Yeah.
and they needed to gain the power and utilize it. And they did very well. They did very well in the middle of the middle of the 19th century, and till they didn't. And so they attach to something else, and they've done very well to consolidate and consume that power now. And you're seeing the next stage,
Yeah.
and
Well,
even they're splitting.
speaking of the next stage, we're gonna have to call it for the time. But thanks for watching. Check us out on Hunter Biden's Crack House on Telegram. I'm at AIConan90.
I'm at legacy underscore Zach on Twitter, and I feel bad now. I took I took all the remaining time of that rant.
It's okay.
It just it kind of pains me that I do that. I'm a monopolist, I guess. I'm a crony capitalist.
Yeah.
That's what I am.
Hey, we're here to monopolize your time because that's what we're on YouTube. But
That is true. It just seems
like
like
I said,
the conservative liberal paradigm, and then of course the boomer rant. And I went a little too far, it seems. But
I
anyways,
really
yeah,
appreciate when he goes hard. So I I just want you to come on to Hunter Biden's Crack House and give us a shout out. Tell us how we're doing. Comment on YouTube. Visit us on Anchor.fm. So let us know how we're doing. We're really trying.
Holy shit,
here.
he's plugging. I didn't have to plug anybody. He took the reins. So yeah. Yeah, it'll all be in the show notes, by the way. So the link to Anchor, our Twitters, maybe you can just find us on Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, the podcast links if you prefer to listen. So it'll all be in the show notes. So you know where to find us. We really want you to contribute, and that's the whole idea. Let's build a community.
I'll throw up a Bitcoin
dealers.
Cash QR code there. I didn't think to do that in the last video, but I'm going to do that this time around. Just hit us up. Let us know. So until next time.
Do you have a QR code?
Yeah, I just keep forgetting to throw it in the video. So
scan that.
Yeah.
Scan that so we can buy you merchandise.
Well,
Bitcoin Cash.
If we get donations, we can really start getting together some more advanced stuff here. I can get a microphone, and Zach can get a computer, and we can start printing T-shirts and setting all that up. So
that's the goal here, and we want to get merchandise for the fans. We want to expand this thing, and then who knows? Maybe we can gather up enough to do more than just merchandise or podcasts. And make this a community and make the community a movement. And that's what we talked about, right? Talked about community, society.
We can finally fulfill our dream of making an appearance in Area 51.
Yes, I kind of want to go to Los Alamos then. Wonder if they're still doing anything over there. Probably.
I wouldn't be surprised. But until next time. Thanks for watching us.
We can make if you contribute to us, we will hit up Area 51, and then we will go to Alaska, and we will march on the harvest.
Hey, I'm open to it. Let's make this happen.
Yeah, we might get shot in the process, but you know what? It's the meme that counts.
Yeah. I did it.
So go ahead.
I was what you call an hero. Good night, sweet prince. Good night.
Good night. So just remember though, on YouTube, like us, subscribe to us, ring that bell to get that notification when we bring out a new episode every week, and comment. I prefer you to comment on YouTube because YouTube has some sort of free speech absolutism to a certain extent. Not as much, but as we wish, but better than Twitter. But join our community at Hunter Biden's Crack House on Telegram, where we can train you to become a meme dealer for Hunter. We're just trying to train you how to be Hunter Biden's crack dealer. That's all we're doing. And we'll go from there. We'll do this thing. So Spotify, Apple, and Amazon Music and Stitcher can catch the legacy right.
And if you're on a federated network, go ahead and post our video. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Share it.
Peace.